That's got to be, Peter, his real attack weapon is the economy.
It is, absolutely.
You said before it should be a lay-down misère for him, but
yes.
How often do presidents get turfed out after just one term?
It's very rare. It's an overwhelming advantage, but not in these circumstances.
Right.
Here where you've got an economy that's made no discernible progress, 8.2% unemployment, most people think the country's heading in the wrong direction. Even though Obama inherited this mess, to be fair to him, he didn't create it. But after 4 years, he's seen as owning it, and for better or for worse, that's what he's got to live with. Where Romney fell down, though, was, and I think Brendon mentioned this, he didn't get very far at all. In fact, he made zero progress in talking about the alternative. He ran through five measures which he would emphasise to fix the problem. All of them were Bush-era measures. There's nothing new there, absolutely nothing new. So, 63% of Americans at exit polls said they voted for Obama to fix the economy. Look at the economy. This is, more than anything else, should be a referendum on the economy. Instead, because the Republicans had a weak field of candidates, they put up an unpopular, not very warm candidate. They've turned it into something closer to a referendum on Mitt Romney's personality. That's a real failing.
Would you agree, Brendon?
I think so. I think so. This should have been a better year for the Republicans. It was a weak field. The primaries were almost comical at times. Rick Santorum never should have been challenging as a serious candidate. He had many flaws as a candidate. So I think, hopefully...
And a lot of senior Conservatives have hardly embraced Mitt Romney, have they? A lot have tweeted about how, get a grip, guy, get rid of your staff.
He's had many positions. He's really approached this like a businessman in some ways. How do you find sort of profits rather than voters? Where's the crowd today? Where am I running? If I'm running for governor of Massachusetts, I'm this type of person. If I'm running in the South, I have these kinds of values and views. So there's a degree of hollowness about Mitt Romney, I think, that we've focused on quite a lot, that I think will never be fully overcome, because he's in some ways a fairly manufactured political creature.
So is this next question sort of redundant? Did he get a bounce out of the convention? Wasn't it Bill Clinton, Brendon, who in 1992, he was the challenger, and he got a huge bounce after his party's convention?
I think we're halfway in the game. The Republicans have had their convention. I think he's got a tiny bit of a bounce. The polls have come a little bit closer in general, but Obama and the Democrats get to have their show this week. And my sense is that the Democrats will get a little bit of a bounce out of that as well. So in 2 weeks, after 2 weeks of conventions, we're probably back to where we were 2 weeks ago. So there'll be a little bit of popularity for both sides, just because the public gets to focus on them a little more.
And Helen, how's this for a telltale sign about how this election contest would have been without Mitt Romney? In polls where Americans are asked to choose between Obama and a generic Republican, so no name, just a blank face, the generic Republican wins. When they're asked to choose between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, it's a dead heat. So Mitt Romney is actually a drag on the Republican vote.
All right, so are people, on the other hand, ready to whack President Obama with baseball bats?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but his approval rating is virtually, the poll average is just on 49%, which is not high. It's not dreadful, but it's you wouldn't put that in baseball bat territory.
But what basis can President Obama, Peter, pitch for 4 more years? You say the economy and the recession wasn't his doing, but, this hope and change we can believe in, will they be getting tired of that? Will he have to really rely on his own charisma and charm?
Well, he's got what's left of that, and let's remind ourselves that in countries outside the US he's a lot more popular than he is at home. We haven't had to watch him every night. We haven't had to live through the unemployment. We haven't had to live through the disappointment with Obamacare and all the other domestic imbroglios. But he, according to the pre-publicity at the Democrat convention, he is going to talk about an economic plan for the next 4 years. Well, it'll have to be pretty impressive, and it'll have to include things that he hasn't thought of yet.
All right. We're going to go to the break, but as we do, let's have a listen to the sorts of slogans that both these candidates will repeat ad nauseum over the next 2 months.
We're going to help the American people and help the families of America.
They have tried to sell us these tired, trickle-down, you're-on-your-own policies before.
Paul Ryan and I have a plan that's going to get America working again.
He did not offer a single new idea.
A better future is ahead.
Just retreads of the same old policies.
America's going to come roaring back.
We've come too far to turn back now.
We're taking this country back.
That's why I'm asking for a second term.
Welcome back to Late Agenda, and my panel tonight is Peter Hartcher, the political and international editor at the Sydney Morning Herald, and Associate Professor Brendon O'Connor from the US Study Centre. Brendon, what do you think we can expect from the Democratic Convention?
Well, I think Obama's main pitch is one of economic fairness. I mean, this hasn't often been a successful tactic for Democrats since the election of Reagan in 1980. It's often been a failing tactic. But maybe the times are right for this campaign. And he's a Democrat, and Democrats have to argue this in some regards, except for extraordinary years where they can either blame Republicans for sending the economy into a tailspin. They tend to make an argument that they're the party for economic fairness. Republicans will favour the very rich. And this is what I think Obama has already been doing on the campaign trail. He'll try to put that in broader policy terms and say, well, his tax reforms will benefit the 90% rather than the 10%. But that argument, as I said before, doesn't always work. But maybe this time round, the ground is a bit more fertile for that argument.
All right, I want to have a quick look at one of the other stars of the Republican convention was the veteran Hollywood actor and director Clint Eastwood. And he certainly made an unusual speech. Let's have a quick listen.
I know you were against the war in Iraq, and that's okay. But you thought the war in Afghanistan was okay. I mean, you thought that was something that was worth doing. We didn't check with the Russians to see how they did there for the 10 years. But what do you want me to tell Romney? I can't tell him to do that. Can't do that to himself. Go ahead.
Peter Hartcher, I mean, you know, Clint Eastwood, of anyone, can probably get away with a lot. Will that have helped or hurt Mitt Romney?
It didn't help him. It got a lot of publicity for Clint Eastwood.
Well, they're all sending it up, though.
Well, exactly. No, it didn't really help him. Clint Eastwood was there to try and recoup some ground for himself after he'd been seen to have endorsed the Obama plan to rescue Detroit from economic collapse. So he may have been there for more personal than political purposes.
All right, let's quickly address some of the other things. I mean, Brendon, which states are now key? And we're seeing, even over the weekend, both candidates have been through the swing states. Which ones are key, and will they convince people in those states?
Well, Ohio is almost always key. It's no surprise the Republicans had their convention in Florida, in Tampa. Florida is always very central to these elections in recent times. Places like Pennsylvania, which is a large state, will be important. Into Wisconsin, where Ryan comes from, that's definitely in play. And the Democrats have big hopes for Virginia, which they won last time, and even North Carolina, which will be tough. I mean, that's where they've got their convention. They want to make a pitch to continue to win North Carolina. So there's only really probably 7 or 8 states where these elections are really seriously contested.
So does that mean that it comes down to, one pundit said that it comes down to maybe not 1 million voters? Out of all those millions of Americans who vote, it will come down to about 1 million who decide it.
Indeed. I mean, neither candidate will spend very much time in California or in Texas because they know where those states are going to go. The Democrats will win in California, Republicans will win in Texas. So it is a very narrowed contest, and with more money in the contest than ever, those people in Ohio and Florida have probably been flooded by all forms of advertising, where those in other parts of the country might almost be like living in a foreign country, where they don't get the attention at all.
Peter, just to move on, I mean, you've written about which presidency will be in Australia's best interests. Given that our relationship with China is absolutely key to our economic prosperity, which one will be in Australia's best interest?
Well, I think from the Australian point of view, there are 2 big sort of equities, if you like, in this. One is we have made ourselves dependent on the US for our national security. So we need a US that is capable of economic revival. At the moment, it's not. So that has to be fixed. And key to fixing that is fixing the national debt problem. The second part is which candidate is better able to manage the relationship with China. It's in Australia's interest that there is a grown-up in the White House with a sane, stable, reasonable approach to the Chinese. Mitt Romney has made aggressive noises about, on day one, naming China as a currency manipulator, which would bring trade sanctions against China. However, Obama said similar things when he was running the first time round, yet in the White House hasn't acted on those impulses. So it may well be that that is just campaign rhetoric.
So you can't tell which one's going to be better?
Well, under Romney, there is a higher chance that the US cannot reach an agreement on a political fix to the budget problem.
And that's a huge issue.
It is a huge issue because if they can't, and the reason I say Romney is more likely to fail on that is that the Republicans are taking a more inflexible stand on this issue. Now, if that fails, the US then hits what's known as colloquially as the fiscal cliff, where automatic budget cuts come into place. If the politicians can't agree, then this happens automatically. Swinging cuts, which by all accounts would put the US back into recession. So that's a very bad idea.
All right, just very briefly, Brendon O'Connor, who do you think is going to win?
Well, I think Obama is favourite. I mean, I've always thought he's in the range somewhere between 55% and 60% favourite to win the election.
Even though it's neck and neck at the moment?
Yeah, I still think that's the case. I mean, I think Obama at this point it's his race to lose. Out of the convention, he'll probably get a little bit of a bounce. And Romney, I think, really needs to improve his performance. I mean, I agree with Peter that it's become a referendum to some extent on Romney's personality, on his political performance. And with an improved performance by Romney, and we saw a little bit of it at the convention, it could be an incredibly tight race.
Peter, who do you reckon's going to win?
In the battleground states, Obama's ahead, slightly, but in all of them he's ahead. The betting markets are giving Obama about a 57% chance, so on those indications, it's Obama's to lose.
Okay, well, it is going to be fascinating because it is so neck and neck at this moment, and
yes,
you can watch it here all on Sky News. Please, I would like to thank both of you, Peter Hartcher and Brendon O'Connor. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Helen.
My pleasure.